Hello again. Grown black folks talk. Black women are not the problem with this picture. Grown conversation, actually. Part two from last time. Now, I let the previous video marinate for a few days because I wanted everybody to just take in the ground shift that there has to be in Louisville, Kentucky, and that Amber Brown must know a great number of black women, women who turned out for her son, women who turned out for George Floyd. So you got 1, 2, 3, 6, 7 years involved there. You have all the women who were involved in Black Lives Matter, no matter what you think about it. Black men did not organize anything that's significant. And in Louisville, 9 people showed up. The man who wrote the post calls himself Colonel Jethro, meaning that's a white man who did the recording. There's a white man in the picture. There's a black woman who's the leader, and that may be Amber Brown, because the picture's in black and white, who also was organized and was part of the march. Maybe. So every other black woman in Louisville stayed home. But now that we have absorbed that reality, this is what I want you to understand. The absence of black women is not the problem in that picture. Look at it again. I showed you this picture several times at the end of the last video. And it was remarkable that there may be, if that is indeed Amber Brown, and we can't tell just because it is a black and white picture and she's bright light skinned. Like if you photograph me in a bright light, I might maybe pass for a white woman. So could be, it's possible. But the absence of black women is not the problem for that picture. Colonel Jethro has noticed, and I'll show you. Let me move myself up out of the way. There is his name, so we know who he is who wrote this article. Good to see him concerned about it. I'm not making fun of that. But here's the problem. The absence of black women is a shift in these matters, but the absence of black women is not what makes this picture so devastating. As many of my commenters have pointed out, it's the absence of black men. Go back in your mind, find some photos of the protest. Count, take out everybody in that photo that was not a black man. Find a picture of several protests and see who you end up with mostly. There are two things to consider about this. Put a pin in that I mentioned that Colonel Jethro at the bottom here is talked about supposed to do it again this coming Sunday. They may have a bigger crowd. That's what they're going to try to work for. I'm sure they've been calling and phone banking and doing whatever they can do all week. But put a pin there. There are two things to consider. The first thing to consider, I remember so many black women, myself included, having conversations about, I wish I had not watched that George Floyd video because I keep flashing and seeing the name, the face of my father, my brothers, my sons, my friends. I was having these conversations with people, having nightmares about it. There's something innately disturbing about watching one man just kill another one over that much time, just callous disregard. That's not supposed to be. If you know the history of white supremacy after the Civil War, you know that the first poster of the Southern Democrats and of conservatism was to conserve the right of the white man to be governor and to keep the Negro down. And one of those first posters had a white man's foot on a black man's neck. So when you understand that Derek Chauvin was copying a pose for those he was trying to impress, it becomes even more disturbing. But here's the thing about it. It didn't occur to me till much later. However much black women may have ideated about what could happen to their fathers, their brothers, their sons, their nephews, you know how much more we must have done that than black men did, given the numbers of black women that went to these protests by comparison? Now, some people be saying, well, black women, Black Lives Matter ended up being a big grift. There's an argument to be made about that. But now all those people in the streets were not there for the grift. They exist. Many of them were black women. An increasing number were white women. And there's a few black white men. There have been white men involved in it ever since that white freedom rider back in the day with John Lewis. Man, they got beat to death along with the rest of them. But apparently, we don't see a level of concern that is the same. And it's probably never more starkly obvious than in the case of Tyre Nichols. Now, I know that this is something that we don't want to confront, but look at it. You know, when white men are more progressive than black men about black men's own things, put a pin there. The first black newspaper, if memory serves, all the way back from journalism days, when the black professor was a Chicago Defender. And the motto of the Chicago Defender was, "Too long have others spoken for us. We wish to speak for ourselves." There was a time in which black men had that attitude. Of course, we're already back in the 1800s. And this is not to say that black men are not speaking for themselves. Now, the thing is, we have to examine what they have to say. In other words, where do black men show up? Today is Super Bowl Sunday. I chose to do this video today for this reason. Today, millions and millions of men are gathered in several hundred are engaged in playing the Super Bowl, coaches, players. And it is going to be especially momentous because for the first time, there are two black quarterbacks in the Super Bowl. We've had two black coaches in the Super Bowl before. Now, people who are going to be picky ticky would tell you that Patrick Mahomes is actually biracial, but for the sake of the argument, let's just say two men of American descendants of the enslaved, that heritage are there. And perhaps black men are never as accepted in Americanism as much as they are participating in the massive patriotic, jingoistic, nationalistic ritual. You ever wonder why the anthem and military flyovers and all that is sport? Sport and war making have been tied up together since the Greeks. Sport and nationalism, sport and empire. You can look that up at another time. It's not the subject of this video, but someday I may do it. Black men are perhaps never more permitted in Americanism than when it comes to the devotion of men to athletics, either participating in, or of course, majority, vicariously participating. So we know that black men will be gathered together with many men around sports events and also around entertainment. So we know that there are things that come together. We also know that there are black men in businesses. Black women have about 30% of black businesses. Black men have the other 70%. And in fact, most black businesses that actually employ other people are owned by black men. You can look this up. The content creator for the Manosphere who covered this most recently is probably T. Hassan Johnson of the Onyx Report. But it is a fact. You can go look it up. Don't argue with me till you've looked it up, because I'm not going to do that work for you. If I'm wrong, come back and correct me. The number could be 75%. The number could be down to 60. But the last time I looked, black men still own about 70% of black-owned businesses. And this is partially why there's black men being frustrated with Goldman Sachs and Grameen, because Goldman Sachs is opening the door for black women. Meanwhile, black men have been routinely shut out of higher levels of capital. This is a fact. This is a fact. Please don't argue with me about this. There are hundreds of years of data available. Now, one has to ask oneself, in a community where people presumably have have $1 trillion in spending power, why black men cannot fund themselves. And see, that also goes to the question of If black men own 70% of the available businesses, is it enough to put a dent in the fact that money leaves the black community in less than an hour? The answer is no. So that even though there are definitely black men in business, there are not enough. There are about 10 million black businesses, of which black men have 7 million. Those 7 million businesses do not have enough market share in anything to prevent black dollars from leaving the community in less than an hour. The most terrifying figure I ever saw was 20 minutes. Black men want to blame black women for consuming, and I'm sitting up there like, no, you don't have enough businesses to hold the money. You don't have it. If 70% of businesses are owned by black men, that means that failure is 70% yours. See, think about being in the patriarchy. It's everything is a man's fault. Men have all power, therefore everything is your fault. Well, okay, black women are moving ahead in business. All right, we'll take 30% of this. But the other 70%, well, we can't keep the dollar in here. You don't have the businesses to absorb it. So not enough black men, 7 million, but not enough. Not quite enough to absorb that black dollar leaving the community. A lot of that money is leaving on jerseys. Mahomes and Hurts. A lot of that money left on jerseys. It leaves on rims. It leaves on other black masculine performances. A lot of it. So we know that there is a gathering, but it's not sufficient for the needs. And it also means that white men still have the gatherings locked down when it comes to major commerce and business. White men still have that locked down pretty well. Asian men around the world are giving them a run for their money. Don't get me wrong, but the point is black men are not gathering there in significant numbers enough to do something about the black dollar leaving the community. By definition, that's what's going on. So, gathering powerfully around sports events and entertainment, gathering in business, but not sufficiently to change things in the community. Now, in education, we have black men who have pointed out, have done well. Jeffrey Kanata, LeBron James has his Promise School. Q Butter has Ziac in, I believe it's New York. King Randall, about 23 years old, has his school running. Umar is in year 13, trying 10 to 13, depending on who you ask, trying to get his together. Nothing is there yet. And of course, there are prominent black men at historically black colleges and universities. So again, we cannot say that men are not gathering in the fields of education to try to change things. They certainly are. However, it is not enough to dent the outcome of black children in school. Not gathering enough, not enough powerfully there. It's a very needed area. But the thing is, if you don't have enough businesses, you probably can't fund enough education. And again, I know we don't have access to capital. Okay, but the problem is what black people are spending 1.2 trillion, 1.4, highest number I've seen is 1.8 trillion dollars through the economy, about 1/12 of the whole national debt. So the money exists, if this is true. We're just not recapturing it. And half the people not recapturing it, adults, are black men. But then this leads to the question of, okay, then where are black men gathering? Well, we got 7 million business owners, just not huge business, but they're there. You have 5 million felons. That's unfortunate. That's unfortunate when you consider that there are only about 15 million black men in the country, 30 to 33% of felons. That is most unfortunate. That's most unfortunate. There's a lot of them there. That's enough to be a burden on all the other black men who are in business. Now, there's some overlap. There are people who are convicted felons who have been released, who have changed their lives, and because it's very hard to get jobs when you're a felon, they open businesses. But that also, in addition to the banking, also has to do with why the black male economy is hampered. Because once you become a felon, the 13th Amendment says slavery is basically abolished, but you got to read that last sentence, except in the case of felony imprisonment. Meaning that once you have that on your record, You have legally been returned to a position where you can be enslaved, working in prison for 90 cents to $4 a day. And when you leave and have that on record, it is almost a gentleman's agreement that you will not be allowed to come out of that status because you lose your voting rights. So if some 5 million Black men are in this position, that is going to make it very, very hard for Black men to have a robust economy. If you have almost as many convicted felons as you have business owners, and there is some overlap, we have a major problem. We're not talking about the morality of these men. We're not talking about how they're building their family. We're not talking about any of that. We're talking about if 5 million men cannot get regular employment because there is a gentleman's agreement that we're just not going to do that. We don't want convicted criminals around. And I know that same man that people are big upping for that electric State of the Union address and how he dunked on the Republicans, got up on the Senate floor when he was a senator talking about the bill that I'm designing. I know it's unfair and I don't care. This bill is designed to keep their sons from taking on our sons. You can look that up. Joe Biden, Joseph Robinette Biden, said that when he designed a crime bill that punished different kinds of cocaine differently. He did this after being mentored by the last of the Dixiecrats. These are people who opposed every single civil rights advance, and then their student managed to figure out how to set up a jurisprudence system that would make sure that inequality would remain and that Black men would stay back. And it worked. And it worked with Black male participation because who told them that they had to sell any form of cocaine? That there was nothing else available. It was the fastest way to the money, but it also means 5 million can't get into the economy. That's a problem. But you know where else Black men have been gathering recently? And when I say recently, I mean the last 20 years. Wayman D. Wesley is up on his Instagram again cooking for his life after having spilled the beans on his page that this man was gathering with other Black men, demeaning Black women because of the brotherhood that enjoys doing that. This man came out and said that he didn't even have a problem with Black women, but because he wanted the attention from these other men who do this online, he, a grown man in his 20s, going to law school, did this just to be in with the boys. That tells you that the brotherhood that gathers together to demean Black women is pretty strong and pretty big. Of course, we do not need Wayman D. Wesley to have said it, but thank you, Attorney Wesley, as you work your way to the unemployment line, formerly of the District Attorney's Office of Harris County. As you work your way through the unemployment line and sit up there and cook for your life so your Asian girlfriend does not leave you. Thank you for confirming that on your way out the door. Of course, we knew that. We knew that because Tommy told us. Tommy Sotomayor. And also the late Kevin Samuels. Made it very clear. It wasn't just that they were up demeaning Black women. It was all those people coming into the comments and just living their best life vicariously as these men said everything to whoever it was that these Black men felt they couldn't get level with, sitting around together, feeling good about their lives by watching Black women get demeaned. So here's the picture that we have. Black men gathering for athletics and entertainment. Black men gathering together in business. Now, there's a significant number of Black men in the workforce, but we know that the number of Black men who are convicted felons and are having trouble in the workforce is equal to the number of people who are working there, almost equal, 7 million versus 5. There are a significant number of Black men in the corporate workforce as well, but there are major problems. And then we know that Black men are spending significant amounts of time gathering together to demean Black women for amusement and attention. How big is that number? Go back. Now, it's something that y'all don't know. Before YouTube basically shadow bans Kevin Samuels, if you don't post a post in a certain number of years, a certain number of months, YouTube basically takes you out of the algorithm. But if you go back and do this, compare his number of subscriptions to his number of views to let you know. Now, people will be quick to tell you 70% of Black women, 70% of Kevin Samuels subscribers were Black women. and only 30% were men. But you go back and you look in the comments and see what these men were getting together and doing. Tommy Sotomayor's channel, some of them have been taken down. But if you can go find that data, you can go do the math on that. These men were gathering together for the joy of demeaning black women. Every single one of these black men, unless they were biracial with a white mother, has a black mother. And if they didn't have a black mother, they had a black grandmother. Every single problem that was going wrong for them with their mom, the girl they couldn't get in high school or middle school. Kevin Samuels himself, 1.5 times divorced, hypergamous both times. Both women got tired of him and left. But his second wife, who had $4 million when she went in, did not quite complete the divorce. So that guess what? Either his mother inherited, or his second wife, who was already twice as rich as he was, is now 3 times as rich as he was. Married hypergamously and lost both times. There was a reason that man was mad at women who could move around and could get on with life without a man who couldn't bring things to the table. And black men who did not feel like they had a fair shake and could bring things to the table, set up and enjoy themselves, and don't argue with me, because all I'm going to do for the next video is post up Wayman D. Wesley's. I've already done that video, but if y'all need to see it, it's still on his Instagram page. Y'all go up there and read how he said, I just did that for the attention. So I think we've determined where black men have been gathering, good, bad, and ugly. But let me tell you where they're not. They are not in sufficient number on the front line for their own affairs when it comes to violence against themselves to change anything. How do we know this? Because this same article said that nothing has changed in Louisville, and apparently nothing has changed in Memphis. And you may be sure that even if this next protest has a few more people in it, until black men take it seriously to address the violence among themselves, nothing will change. Let me tell you a hard lesson I had to learn as I was growing up. I am a composer of much bigger gifts than a dying, cracked out black community could ever support. And the support of the new people, if you will, and the richer white people in the area can be somewhat fickle because they don't like you outdoing their children of the same age. I can go back and forth. And then even sometimes their support, that was difficult for me to understand. It was frustrating to know how gifted I was and to be caught between two worlds that were just one couldn't, and I was never sure that one would go all in. My father videoed one of my recitals once and got a look at everybody's face. And you could see who was supportive and was enjoying what I was doing and who wasn't. I'll never forget that. I was maybe 14. And how much backlash my music teacher got every year for those recitals. Every year. People told her to stop me from doing as much. I laughed and brought even more the following year. Telling me what I can't do is always an invitation. Well, some of y'all know I was a moderator with Demas and Thoth. Y'all already know what can happen to you. I've always been this person. Just, I used to be a much smaller, younger version, but I've kind of always been this person. But what I had to grow up and learn about was no one was coming to do for me what I still had to do for myself. At 42, I have more opportunity than I can do anything with. I spend time sometimes beating myself up with the things that I now can do and just in my human limitation can't get to. But I had to become my own first advocate because who was given the gift? Me. Who was God going to hold responsible for doing everything that could be done to his glory? Me. And so there's no point to me going out there and asking anybody to do for me what I can't do for myself as long as I am able to do it. I'm a grown woman now. It's not anybody else's job to see my talent and make it everything is everything. It's my job to do that. It was a hard realization because between being feeling entitled and feeling deprived, It's a tough situation to be in. I have deep compassion for the fact that black men were turned to the ground for 25 7-year rotations before there was a significant number of black women, meaning that the United States extracted the value of these men's lives and turned them into the ground without descendants to make sure that for 140, 175 rotations, see, if reparations really get serious, we're going to end up having to have that talked about. This country will come out and talk about it. We turn 175 years of y'all into the ground. We don't owe you any money before the year 1800. You don't have any descendants before. You don't have any foreparents that lived before 1800 ish. You don't have any. You're going to find out that they were shipping in mostly men, meaning that nobody has any descendants before about 1780, 1790, because you had to have a black mother too. So they're going to cut that reparation number down to around 1800. Y'all do your research on that. This means that the United States essentially got away with murder. At least till you consider that if the United States had paid that debt down from 1619 to 1865, it would not be in debt to almost the same amount given the interest to China and Germany today. It's almost the same amount. See, nobody gets away, but that's a different video. I have great compassion for black men feeling like people like us did all this work and we don't get anything from that. And we're expected to do all this and do all this from zero. I have great compassion for that because I know that to a certain extent it is true. Slaves left with nothing. The 40 acres and a mule never came through. I have compassion from that viewpoint. It is very difficult for anybody to start from nothing. Here is the problem. And I think some of the resentment that goes on is like this. Black women already proved it can be done. So there's no excuse. There's no excuse. Some black men, many black men, proved it can be done. The United States colored troops proved it can be done. So there's no excuse out here, though. We've already started with practically nothing and made great deals. We made more progress in the 60, 70 years after slavery than any group of people has ever done on earth. Ever. Ever. Go look it up. So we know this can be done. But see, if black men do not care to advocate for themselves, if they don't see let me correct myself. I think that black men do see themselves, their fathers, their brothers, their sons in these murders. Because if you sit down and talk to black men who have lived in violent communities, they will talk to you about the people that they saw killed and the impact that it has on them. The problem is converting this to action on a mass level. If black men cannot convert this to action on a mass level, nothing will change. Because black women cannot do what black men refuse to do. Now, a whole nother discussion about is protest the most necessary thing? No, I keep mentioning that 1.2 to 1.8 trillion dollars that keeps being spent. I keep mentioning that if black men go into business and level up their businesses, working together, spending their money together, then they can capture more of the money that comes out. If black men would stop being mad at Goldman Sachs and Grameen about giving black women loans to build their businesses up, that would be 3 million more strong businesses to work with to capture some of this black dollar. I'm not saying that being at a protest is necessarily the most effective thing. I'm not saying it's the most safe thing for anybody. Black women definitely need to come off the line. We are not physically built to be out there. Here I am at 5'3". The shortest man I've ever dated is an inch taller and far more muscle, capable of far more muscle than I am. What am I doing out there in front of him? It doesn't make sense from a physical creation standpoint. But protest is not working. So maybe we then have to look at how are we spending our money and where are we gathering? Maybe, if black men will be serious about the athletes who they make rich, about we're going to need you to start putting some of this money back into the community. And I know people are going to say, well, the last time black people tried to do that in that 70 or 80 years, it wasn't just one race riot that burned down Black Wall Street. There was about 160, 170 of those. This is correct. This is correct. That did happen 100 years ago. When people give me that excuse, I want to slap them. So you mean to tell me you're going to sit there and not build anything when you can go on the internet where no one knows who you are or what you are is concerned, and you're not going to build something over what happened 100 years ago? See, in the 21st century economy, there's no excuse for anybody. Like I said, there's more opportunity out there than I can get to now. There's more opportunity for anybody. Now, if I didn't want to post my actual likeness and stand by my work by my real name, I wouldn't have to. And there are places where I make money where, of course, there's know your customer, so somebody has to know who I am, but not you. See, I work in a world, we will return to our crypto series next week. I live in a world in which I watch what people do, and when buyers are coming in and the bull cycle at nearly the end, I'm selling out stuff and getting out. They don't know a black woman is leaving and leaving them holding the bag. They don't know that. They just know that they got the thing. The thing's been running from 7 cents. They just know that they got it, and they're sitting up there talking about, oh, it's going to go to $10. It's only 205. This is a bargain. They's gonna top out at 250. I know that, but they don't. They don't know that the black woman's getting over on them, or at least understands the market better than they do. If they want to buy it at 205, that's their business. If I want to sell it at 205 and they're willing to buy it, that's their business. They don't know that. I used to be in a couple crypto groups on Reddit. I used to bounce those young white boys in there so hard. I mean, I used to hurt them so bad. They would come and try to bully me, thinking I was one of the boys, and I would talk to them like I was one of the boys, minus the curse words and the foolishness. Intellectually, it didn't matter. They were not my equal. They got dealt with accordingly, coming at me foul. They have no idea and would have been so mad. Then finally, I put up my black female avatar and it stopped. Because after a while, people realized, oh, snap, not today. I saw what she said to so and so. I'm not about to get humiliated. But if I had never put that up and hadn't just started looking at block, lickety, block, block, as the gift says, you're not even smart enough to deal with me. Block, lickety, block, block. Before I was mature enough to know to do that, no one would have known that. They largely accepted being handled because they figured, well, I just met a man who was more slick than I was. No, I was a weapon the whole time. No one's out there checking for who you are unless you signal them who you are. I just found out today. Whole content creator. I thought I knew who this person was. Got a whole nother identity having me out here talking about the individual formerly known as. But see, that's what you can do. Nobody has to know about your insecurities as a black man out here. Just pick what you're gonna do and just do it. You can get a white man's avatar if you really need one. Chef Way is back on his Instagram page. I hope every black man who agrees with him supports him. You know why? Because I don't need him in a restaurant close enough to see who the black women are that he's serving after those black women protested outside his office and encouraged him to resign. I don't need him to see that. I don't need him to be working in a school where black girls are working. But the thing about it is there is enough room for black men to be able to do the things they need to do and not have to be beholden to anyone, including black women. The world has almost 8 billion, in fact, we may have crossed the gap to 8 billion people out there. There is a market for anything that you prepare to do well. Now, I personally wouldn't eat Chef Way's food at this point in the development of things. Wayman D. West, how about no? If he touches it anywhere, nope, not today. But someone will. There's enough room, no matter how messed up you've gotten behind something else. If you have a skill, you can eat. But this is why there is no excuse for black men not coming together powerfully and gathering together to do the things they need to do for themselves. It is not necessary for Black men to fall into the clutches of Joe Biden's laws. 30 years ago, there was no reason then, but I can understand how a lot of young men felt like they had no better option. Shannon Sharpe is 55, and he recently got on his show and talked about now he feels like he's ready for marriage because all he was thinking about during his career was pulling his family out of poverty. That's all he was thinking about doing. And he said, I was a terrible boyfriend and I was a terrible father because I couldn't concentrate. This is all I had to work with. I had to be the best and work the longest and stay in the field long till I managed to do this. And now that all this is done and I have my money right and I have my things together, now I feel like I make a good husband. I'm sitting up here like, sir, if you were 55 and were anybody else, you would not have two dead flies when your actuarial say that you'll be gone in maybe 11 to 17 years. And that's being generous, given that so many Black men are leaving at his age. But he's Shannon Sharpe. So I wish him well. Now, because I wish him well because he took responsibility for who he is. Like I respect Shaquille O'Neal, who took responsibility for him being the problem in his marriage. I respect that. But see, a lot of Black men are just rolling and refusing to be responsible for these things that are going on, and therefore not in a position to be able to be responsible to fix their own lives. Until you recognize your part in your difficulties, you're not going to step up to that next level of being, I'm also responsible for fixing it, and I can. And see, this is why. See, this is why. This is why. Because you cannot powerfully show up as an advocate for yourself till you accept responsibility for your own life. Now, I ask you to put a pin on Goldman Sachs and Grameen as we close out here. There is a study of microloans. Grameen is very well known for doing microloans around the world, and now they've become very interested in Black women in the United States of America. Here's what's interesting about loan organizations around the world. You know what they found out? This isn't just relative to just American Black people. If you loan money to women, because they have the concern for the family and the culture being passed on because they have the children and they also take care of the elders, they will be faithful and consistent with that money and they will increase it and return it and work to get themselves eligible to make a bigger loan. If you give it to the men, they'll trick it off, trying to compensate themselves for not being able to rescue themselves and their families from their situation. This is data from around the world. So when Grameen began looking at making loans inside the United States, guess what? And looked at Black people, guess what they found out? The data still holds. This is why Goldman Sachs gave the loans to the women. Because Grameen and Goldman Sachs know from data about men around the world that when you try to do too much to help men who are not in a position or not focused enough to help themselves, you are wasting your effort. And this is why Black women in Louisville stayed home. Black women are beginning to figure it out. And unless and until Black men take the lead in doing what is necessary, being point one if there's protest involving the killing of a Black man, until they take point one and being out there in the streets doing what needs to be done and saying what has to be said, it will remain the same. Until Black men look at their 7 million businesses and decide that we're going to seriously work together and provide the things that the consumers need. Yes, we know that most of our consumers are Black women. So perhaps if we are nicer to them, we might actually get their money. You know, there's a whole nother video to be done about you own the majority of the Black women, but you will allow your counterparts to sit up and talk against your biggest consumers. Do you think that's good marketing strategy? That's a different video. But until those things happen, the problem is not the absence of black women in that picture. The problem is the absence of black men. And until black men decide to show up powerfully for themselves and advocate for the things, not that they want, but the things that they need to move forward in this country, they will not. We have, as black women, done everything that has been in our power to do. And in 2020, we got down to having to do those things in the face of black men insulting us every day. That's actually been going on for 20 years, at least 20 years. There's an end to everything. And then both black men and everybody else, Colonel Draft Rose white man, sitting up here talking about it ain't doing any good anyway. How much longer are black women supposed to endure it? Well, in Louisville, they said, no, this is the end. See, Tyree Nichols was unfortunate. And so were the 5 silly police officers who allowed themselves to kill this man, to murder him, allegedly. Still on trial. We know he killed him. We got that. But is it murder? We don't know yet. They have not been convicted yet. It's unfortunate that Wayman D. Wesley's apology came out first, and that everybody had to read that black men, just to get along with each other, are demeaning black women for fun. That was unfortunate. That was unfortunate. It may be that the point of no return has been passed. We have done all that it is reasonable for us to do. Now, I go hard for the black men that I know and that I know respect themselves, respect me, respect the community. I go hard for them. I always have and I always will. But when I find out you ain't about nothing, I drop you like a hot potato. When I find out you want the drama and you want foolishness, I drop you like a hot potato. There are enough men out there that know. Try Jesus. Don't try me. There are enough men out there that know. Offline and on. Ain't nobody got time for all that. No, no one has time for all that. Again, it brings me no joy to make a video like this. But it has to be said. We have to mature enough to stop asking people to show up for us when we're not willing to show up for ourselves. The problem in that picture is not the absence of black women. I'm going to say it again. The problem in that picture is not the absence of black women. The absence of black women shows that black women are tired of trying to hold up a load alone. The problem in that picture is the absence of black men. The problem in all these movements to benefit black men is the absence of black men. The problem in that picture is that black men are okay with each other being killed 25 times a day and feel demoralized and that they can't do anything about it. As long as they believe this, guess what? It is not far from being absolute open season again. And if you pay attention, it's kind of been creeping up already. Black women are pretty much deciding we're not going to go out there. Who was it that said this? Attorney Dennis Sperling let himself get caught up on the air talking about, black women, if you would get out of the way, I would deal with the Pookies and the Ray Rays. Waymon D. Wesley is not a Pookie or a Ray Ray. Tyree Nichols was not a Pookie or a Ray Ray. Those 5 police officers were not Pookies or Ray Rays. The Army sergeant who killed that woman is not a Pookie or a Ray Ray. The what's his face that killed his wife and his girlfriend was not a Pookie or a Ray Ray. None of these men were that class. They were all Dennis Sperling's class of men. But see, this is the thing that's so bad about that. Dennis Sperling and Attorney Sperling and Umar Johnson sit up there and ideate about a black civil war against each other. What's going to happen is you're going to get clapped up by the National Guard out there doing that. And swept off the street. And everybody needs to look up Extraordinary Rendition. See, the violence that you do as a black man can be done unless the bullet turns at the corner. Unless the bullet forgets to turn the corner. The minute anybody else gets involved, you about to be clapped up and snapped up. And it won't be long. The KKK arranged this situation in the 1915s. Most people do not know that. Um, they took all the old propaganda, they brought it back. A fellow did a movie called Birth of a Nation, in which the KKK were positioned as the defending knights. And the worst period of race riots in American history broke out right after that. So all these clips are being saved of all this anti-human propaganda. All these clips are being saved of black men doing everything but building up their community. All these clips are being saved of black men being absent and doing things for themselves so that they can be positioned as lazy, shiftless, and only of good service, as that horrible man, John D. Calhoun, said, that he said slavery was a positive good because the only thing the African was good for was to be a slave. John D. Calhoun actually said something worse than that. But to boil it down, this tireless advocate for slavery, that's what he said. And the line of John D. Calhoun is being pursued by today's white supremacists, and all they're doing is snapping up evidence of where black men are and where they are not. And see again, this is the problem. Where are black men not in the struggle for their own survival? Video wasn't paused. I just wanted you to stop and consider. As long as black men remain absent from the catbird seat in the struggle for their own survival, then the trend will continue to roll as it is. Black women cannot change it. I said last time that what happens is if a group of men is so defeated they can do nothing else for themselves, they are wiped out, and the women move on to the dominant society. Their genes pass on, the culture becomes absorbed, and that is the end of that race of people in the world. It has happened to many before. Understand that African Americans in total can disappear from the world stage as a race. And even though, of course, we think of that as a massive disaster, a world of 8 billion people would barely miss us. But we're essential. There are a billion Africans. The world will be all right. And this is not something that we like to think about. But nobody is irreplaceable. So if a race of people, if the race of men decide they can't do anything about their situation, they're right. But the payoff is the women generally make it, the men generally self-destruct. And in a generation or two, there are no more men of that line left. This is what's on the table. Do I want to see this? No. I would like there to be men in my father's image in the world. I think the American black man has proved his importance. If you have shoes on your feet that are important, a man of African descent in the Caribbean provided you that. If you ever had a blood transfusion, if you ever had modern heart surgery, if you had surgery where you used a bulldog clamp, Vivian Thomas gave you all that. If you had food in your refrigerator that was trucked in, a black man gave you that. If you have ever worn a mask or gotten a vaccine, two black men gave you that. Inoculation began near the time of the Revolutionary War. A slave happened to share with his master in Virginia how Africans did not ever get smallpox and die of it. And of course, mask, Garrett A. Morgan invented the gas mask that helped soldiers of all colors survive in World War I. And that eventually became the gas mask to help people be safe from the flu. And down the line, that was developed into all the masks that we have been using, the surgical masks and the N95 and all those things, the filtration processes. Garrett A. Morgan also gave us the caution light at the corner. The yellow light gives you a second to figure out what you need to do next. all of that. So the American black man, the black man who is descendant of the enslaved, is very important. But if he does not see his own importance and do the things that go for survival and success, I can't compensate for that. Neither can any other black woman. Gentlemen, it's up to you. It always was. You're either going to figure it out or you're not, or you're not. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.